Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
Do you like organic fair trade coffee? Do you appreciate a well-made pour-over, but just don't have time for all the rigmarole of setup, cleanup, and brew time? Reach for Mount Hagen coffee. When you want that artisanal flavor, but don't have time for all the bullshit. Mount Hagen coffee, brought to you by Airey Bros Radio. Cheers. I got 4 minutes.
Here we are in a situation in which unless you go to the store to get your food, 99% of people will starve in 2 weeks. When I ask people, what are cities designed for? Most people say, for people. He said, no, they're not designed for people, because if they were designed for people, they would have clean air, they would have access to good growing food, they would have all these other things. They are designed for commerce. It's kind of hard because it's sort of like trying to pick which one is your favorite baby. But like those themes of community, food, nature, they are key ones that, in my opinion, need to be revised. Kids are merciless because they put a mirror in front of you showing you where you suck on a regular basis. They found an audience, they found a cow to milk, and they keep feeding it crap because they know it's gonna work for them. Because everybody can be cool when things are going their way. Well, maybe not everybody. Some people are obnoxious no matter what. Sometimes it's so easy to build these narratives about ourselves being great and wonderful, and then all it takes is a screaming kid for that narrative to come tumbling down and you realize your limitations. This is Daniele Bolelli, and you are listening to Airey Brothers Radio.
Today on episode 61 of Airey Bros Radio, professor, author, philosopher, and martial artist Daniele Bolelli joins us. You ready, Prince?
Locked and loaded, Richie Rich. Been listening to those History on Fire podcasts, getting all that good history information that they don't teach you in schools, and now we're going to put it on the fans at Airey Bros Radio.
100. First, learn about Daniele on the Joe Rogan Experience, another JRE alumni joining us on Airey Bros Radio today. Daniele is a wealth of knowledge. He's a professor. He's written several books. He's a martial artist and he's a philosopher. And a lot of what he says resonates with the Airey Bros. So we were lucky enough, fortunate enough, and humbled to have Daniele join us today.
Yeah, after this podcast, I was walking around the city listening to Juicy by Biggie Smalls, man, because when we get like Daniele on the podcast, that's a win for the Airey Bros, and you sit down at the learning tree for a little bit and take in what someone like Daniele has to offer. Just, get those good vibes going, get you strutting on cloud 9 after podcasts like this one.
Yes, this podcast has been a beautiful thing for us because it has allowed us to have conversations with people who inspire us, people who motivate us, and people who are out there doing their thing and fighting the good fight and being the change that we want to see in the world. So anytime we get to share these individuals with you, we are ecstatic. And to be quite honest, for much of this conversation, I was a little starstruck.
Yeah, a lot. I had to write some questions down as we were going. We talked over each other a little bit, but yeah, that's just part of it, and it was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Hope you all enjoy this as much as we did, and it's filled with all sorts of stuff. But definitely check out Daniele's podcast, History on Fire, and go check out some of his books. All those things will be in the show notes. So go ahead, and if you aren't already, give us a subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and if you wouldn't mind, give us a review. We would greatly appreciate it.
And give us a follow at Airey Bros on Instagram. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Airey Bros Radio.
Much love. Namaste from the boys of 1512.
So, how's your life been treating you during this crazy time in history?
Not too bad, actually. I still work because I teach online for my college classes. I still have my podcast. It sucks not being able to train. I mean, I train at home, but it's not the same not to be able to do jiu-jitsu, stuff like that. It sucks not to be able to hang out with friends as much. It definitely sucks for my daughter because as a 10-year-old, not be able to play with other kids for like 3 months at a time, it's a little much. But hey, all considered, I could have it a lot worse.
Yeah.
Now, if I heard correctly, are you in Hawaii right now?
Man, my pronunciation is always no, it's not Hawaii. And it's not Ohio, which is the other one that people think I'm saying. Is Ojai spelled O-J.
Oh.
And it's, no, it's a place about 90 minutes out of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So it's close enough that I can still go hang out in LA if need be and meet people or something, but far enough that I'm in this mellow, nice, small town, and it's quite pleasant.
Yeah, it's very nice in Ohio. It's got got a spiritual vibe to it. There's a lot of kind of woo-woo-ish people living up in that part of California.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of small towns, they are very cool, pretty, but you have the downside that sometimes you're stuck with 4 toothless rednecks on a mountain, and it's like eventually gets old. Why seems, and again, I'm saying it from my window because I haven't had a chance to explore it that much yet, but it seems like it has more interesting things happening around. So it has that small town vibe, but also a little more alive.
Have you been able to get out in nature while you're up there?
Sure, yes, nature, but not much in the humans department.
Right. Do you think that that's because of the town itself, or just the times that we're living in, more say?
It's like still lockdown, more or less taken seriously by most people, and it's hard to know what to do. It's hard to know because it's you don't want to be the dumbass who's taking it not seriously enough, and at the same time you don't want to. It's very difficult to know what's the right call, and there are 3 zillion people who their entire understanding of medicine and science come from 45 minutes of YouTube videos spouting left and right with absolute certainty about what the right thing to do is. I'm like, I don't fucking know what the right thing to do is. It's hard. It's difficult to understand it.
Are you teaching summer classes currently?
Yeah, I'm teaching summer classes, and that's usually a lot of work at the beginning when you have to set up a course, but then once you have set it up, it kind of runs itself. So it's not, I work, but it's not that bad. So that part is not too hard.
What classes are they? What subjects?
What am I doing right now? I think I'm doing a couple of different kinds of US history, Native American. I think that's it right now.
What's your favorite part of Native American history to study or teach?
The stuff that I know probably the most on is all like Great Plains, Lakota, Cheyenne through the 1800s. That tends to be kind of my heavy focus.
How does a guy from Italy get into well, first of all, what is the in today in 2020? Is it indigenous people? Is it American Indian? Is it Native American? What?
Most native people I know don't give a crap, as
Yeah.
long as they're obviously not insulting. Everybody's got their favorite kind of thing. Some people like one more than another, but most people tend to be pretty cool with the understanding that if it's not meant in a hostile way, it's fine.
Okay. So my question was, how does a guy from Italy get so into Native American history?
It's a good one. I don't know, to be honest, because it's something that has always been. I can recall a time in my life when I wasn't into it. It's something that since I was a very little kid, I was fascinated with. So I don't even know how it came up or how I was exposed or what it was, but it was so early on that hard to pinpoint.
And what was that exposure as a kid?
That's the thing. Who knows? Did they show me like some books for little kids? Did they show me, was it Western? I don't know. I really don't know how it started.
Okay.
And what are some, I don't know, misconceptions or some things that stick out to you when it comes to Native American history that the mass population might not know about or might find interesting?
Well, for one, I think people, there's this idea of American Indians or Native Americans, however the hell you want to call it, but like as a monolithic entity that like everybody shares the same culture, everybody shares the same, they spoke one language, they had one culture. When the reality is that when you look at different tribes, depending on which tribe you're talking about and what time period, they were as different as they could be from one another. You had nomadic buffalo hunters, you had full-time farmers, you have living in full-on state societies with actual towns and even cities, if you will. You have, the range of native cultures is all over the place. So sometimes it tends to be kind of painted with a big brush stroke as like one thing. It's not. It's many different things.
And I kind of heard you talking about this on Duncan's podcast. Being a student of history, being a teacher of history. Are there any periods of time in history that you can look back on, pandemic-wise, or that kind of can relate to what's going on now that we can kind of learn from?
I mean, there have been a bunch, right? There has been a lot of different bad pandemic throughout history, really bad. Like, even Spanish flu is not even as bad as the Black Death or something. The one thing that's different today is that unlike in the past where most people lived relatively close to food production, most people were farming or most people, you could lock up the gate and still survive. Here we're in a situation in which unless you go to the store to get your food, 99% of people will starve in 2 weeks. So it's a little bit of to me, it's kind of a wake-up call of how stupid this idea of just removing the overwhelming majority of the population from food production is. Even something as small, and that's not going to save you or even keep you alive, but even something as small as having a garden where you plant a bunch of fresh produce, it's a start. It's something that I was listening to this guy, Ron Finley, who has a course about gardening and stuff. And Finley is hilarious, but he was saying, when when I ask people, what are cities designed for? And most people say, for people. He said, no, they're not designed for people, because if they were designed for people, they would have clean air, they would have access to good growing food, they would have all these other things. They are designed for commerce. They are designed for money-making exchange, not for quality of human beings. And it really seemed to be spot on. It's like, to me, I mean, what I'm saying is not let's return to the past. That's totally not the solution, and it's not even desirable. But it's like, what is that we can keep of modern life that's cool and desirable? while at the same time not losing some of the stuff that made things work in the past and could still make things work in the future.
Yeah, do you see a lot of, especially in a place like Detroit, where they do a lot of urban farming and taking back that land that at one point, was such a huge city in the, in industrialization of automobiles in the automobile industry, and now they're building and putting those plots of land to use and creating gardens and trying to supply and feed the people within the city of Detroit.
And when you do that, it changes your relationship with nature. It changes the relationship with the food you eat, with nutrition. I mean, it's like, when you have stuff growing in your garden, it tastes nothing like the stuff you buy at the store. It's just so much tastier and filling and awesome. And so it's like, again, I'm sure not everybody can become a full-time farmer, and it's not even desirable, but at least a little bit. At least more people growing more food and having a connection with the food they eat and with nature, that's not a bad idea. And figuring out ways to make that happen, I think, is really important.
And in your opinion, would you say that's probably the biggest takeaway from this current situation is people need to have their own little gardens and stuff like that?
I mean, certainly noticing now, they mention pandemic and the next day every store is empty and people are fighting each other. It's kind of not a good sign in terms of where people are at with a minimum degree of self-sufficiency. So to me, I mean, even before the pandemic, to me, like, changing the relationship that human beings have with nature, changing the relationship that we have with the food we eat, changing the relationship even with a sense of community, where maybe you don't have just your little plot, maybe something where you help each other out. Your neighbors are going on vacation and you got to water their plants for 2 weeks or something, you know what I mean? But like those themes of community, food, nature, they are key ones that, in my opinion, need to be revised. We need to take a second look at the choices we have been making in regards to those things and what better choices we can make.
It seems now, to a certain extent, the community is even getting further and further with having to wear masks, or maybe you don't think it's necessary to wear a mask in public and you're walking on the sidewalk. We live in a city, we're here in Denver, so we get it all the time where people are jumping off the sidewalk to get away from us because we're
right.
So that community thing is tough.
It is. It's complicated for sure.
Now, being a history professor, if you had your option to choose any period of history to teach and it wasn't, given to you by the college, what would it be?
It's hard to tell because I like a bunch of things in many different time periods. Some of the stuff I like, one thing that I enjoy a lot, but there's so little about it, so it's kind of frustrating because there's not a whole lot to go on, is just prehistory, hunting and gathering cultures. It's super fascinating, but it's also, we're kind of thin in terms of sources, in terms of specific events or things like that. So other than that, I really enjoy jumping into particular stories. There are particular stories in the history of pretty much any country and in most centuries that are awesome. So I think that's what it is. And that's what I enjoy doing with History on Fire, is that I can pick any story I want in any continent, in any century, and run with it. And in the process of doing it, you get a general context of what the history was like at that time in that particular place. But also you get to, you play with the stories you really want.
I taught high school for 11 years and spent some time in the teaching U.S. history, U.S. 1, and I'd always been a fan. That was always my thing, was the stories and uncovering the things that aren't necessarily, taught, or at least I was taught in high school or covered in the history books. And we're starting to see a lot of that now, more and more. For those specific topics that are sometimes hard to research, like, where are you digging to find
Yeah, it's tricky because sometime I dig, I find enough little material out there that I'm like, oh, this is a great story. And then I start digging and I'm like, yeah, but I'm done in 5 minutes because there's nothing beyond those few lines. So there are a bunch of great stories that I can cover because there's just not enough material. But then sometimes not only there are plenty that have a lot of material, but there are some that maybe they don't have that much material, but you can piece together. Like when I did an episode on this Chinese pirate queen at the beginning of the 1800s, and I was hoping to be able to do kind of a more biographical thing on her. There was enough material to go on for 10, 15 minutes on her. That was it. And so for the rest of the episode, I kind of drew the lens a little wider, taking a look at like piracy in China, in southern China, the conditions that led to it, more of the historical context and the wider phenomenon. And then I got into her more specifically as an example of this greater context. And so sometimes, you have to restructure it a little bit like that.
And when sifting through information where there might not be that much or not many sources, how do you kind of know if you're taken from credible sources or someone who's kind of just writing their own story?
Well, and that's the thing. So you start by looking at what's out there on that topic. You look at Wikipedia, you look on Amazon, you start finding out what are the books that people refer to when talking about this story. Then you take a look at who they are. And, you quickly see, does it look semi-credible? Does it come from an academic press? Is just some random guy out of his basement? What's going on? Then you look at the reviews. What are the people who like it? Why do they like it? The people who don't like it, what are the problems that they bring up? What's the general consensus on it? And sometimes you can tell already in the review, like, okay, this guy didn't do his homework. This guy is making stuff up. Out, next. And then when you have more or less credible sources who tell different things about events, you just start digging and you see what seems to be more logical to you. If one is answering the problem better than the other. And if it's not that clear, you can just say it. You say, look, this is what we know about this event. This is how person A interprets it. This is how person B interprets it. You choose what you like to believe, because the reality is nobody knows, and this is the possible interpretations and why some people believe in them.
And for our listeners out there, what are 3 or 4 of your favorite History on Fire podcasts that they should look into or check out?
It's kind of hard because it's sort of like trying to pick which one is your favorite baby. It's like that one ugly, or forget about that one. It's like so okay. There are a couple that I did on Caravaggio. The Italian painter was an absolute gangster in the literal sense of the word. Wanted for murder, sword fights in the street, and at the same time painting the greatest masterpieces of the 1600s. That was fun. There's a lot that I've done on Native American stuff that I enjoyed. There's a whole series on Crazy Horse, one on the War for the Black Hills. I had a blast with those. I think it really boils down, one can take a look at all the free episodes that are available, see what topics one is more fascinated with, and run with it. Because, I can have mine, but maybe sometimes it's more into a particular time period or place, and that may be their easier entry point.
And when putting those History on Fire podcasts together, how much more work or little work is there putting one of those podcasts together opposed to writing one of your books, doing the research for your books?
I mean, it's different because it tends to be more concentrated. So whereas if you're writing a book, it's usually something that takes years, you're doing other things at the same time, and you add a few things as time goes by. The podcasts are extremely concentrated. So it's like, okay, in the next 2 months, you're going to read everything that there is to read on this topic. So, the topic is just spilling out of your ears after a while, because that's all you're doing. You read that same story 10 times already, but you keep finding information that adds layers of complexity to the story. So easily for like a 2-hour episode on History of Fire, there's anywhere between 100 to 200 hours of research that go in it. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah. And how much of your teaching is like listening to your podcast in terms of your lectures?
I use some of them kind of to show students how in some way, when you have time to dig deeper into the topics, far from being more tedious, is actually more fun, because the stories, the character kind of are fleshed out and come to life. In the classroom, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous in a way, the stuff we do, because you have to cover so much in so little time that all you have time for is this quick sweeping overview and boom, you're out. You know, the other day I was recording a lecture and I had to cover everything in US history from the 1920s through World War II. 2 hours, right? 25 years of modern US history in 2 hours. Like if I were to do it in podcast form, it would be 100, 200 hours of recording, because there are so many great stories and this, that, and the other. In survey courses, you're just breezing through it. Because the reality is that, you know, most students report that about 6 months after they are done with a course, they forgot at least 90% of the material. So if you know that people are not going to retain it, why try to dive into every little detail there is? You know, just try to provide a general narrative, a good overview, and then people who are into it, then you offer the resources to dive a lot deeper. But I do generally assign at least maybe one podcast series on something, just to give them a flavor of how it can be more fun when you dig deeper. You know, when I do US history, I often use Theodore Roosevelt podcast. There are like 3 episodes on Theodore Roosevelt's life and his presidency, and he's such a nutcase, and it's so fascinating to see how he develops through time, that it's way more interesting than just the quick skimming overview.
And when you look at our current political climate and the characters that we have at hand, and knowing what you know from digging into these history things, how much of it was just that there was just no, you know, we have so much access to so much information so quickly, so rapid firely, that nothing gets away from anyone? Like, how much of history is lost on just that fact alone? You know, finding some of these stories, you know, you can dig into some of these presidents and their extracurricular activities. I think of the majority of American people would be pretty shocked to find out that this sort of stuff that's going on now.
Oh yeah,
back in the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, in fact, that's what makes it interesting. Sometimes drawing parallels between modernity and history is fun, because it makes it a little more relevant, and you don't look at the past as something that you can relate to, but you see, you know, the same dynamics at play in many cases. You know, within the modern context, also there's a ton of disinformation that's been spread left and right, and both by true believers, because they are ideologically committed to one interpretation, and so they kind of tweak the evidence to fit their interpretation. But also there's a ton of grifters who are out there to make money, and they realize that there's an audience that's going to put down the money if you just keep feeding them a certain narrative. And so they'll gladly do it, you know. And in some cases, it's so blatant that it's like, does somebody seriously listen to these people thinking they are for real? Because it's obvious they don't believe the stuff they are saying. They found an audience, they found a cow to milk, and they keep feeding it crap because they know it's gonna work for them. But it's like, how do you not see through such an obvious grift? Is always funny.
Yeah. Lack of education is how I like to term it these days. Keep it as positive as I can.
And I mean, some of that stuff is weird, because I don't understand why. Like, I give you an example. Like, with my daughter, she's just finished 5th grade, right? And in school, never once they opened an atlas trying to figure out where countries are in the world, or even where the 50 states are, or anything like that. And I'm just like, man, that's not complicated. It even can be a fun game to do, and it doesn't take that much time. And, in 3 hours spread over time, you could just have dramatically improved somebody's understanding of the world around them. Why don't they do it? It's like, I find it, to me, it's like not teaching that 2 and 2 equal 4. Is like, how do you not do that? It's so basic. It's like, if you don't do that, what the hell are you doing in school all day long?
Yeah. So have you been able to do more homeschooling type things now that you're both?
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that is, it's fun. It become a game. It's like, okay, blank map of Europe, go. Let's see who can get the most, where you can place the countries. And you make a game out of it, and it's kind of fun. And then it's like, again, that doesn't mean you're really particular, like you're super well educated, but at bare minimum, you know where stuff is. It's like,
Yeah.
that's like bare step one. So I figure at least you should have those. Then we can always build on that, but that seemed like a good start.
So you had mentioned your daughter's 10 and you're a single father and you've been raising your daughter by yourself for a while. What has that experience taught you about yourself throughout the 10 years?
I mean, for one, kids are merciless because they put a mirror in front of you showing you where you suck on a regular basis. Because, the thing is, you cannot blame a kid for their fuck up when they are little. If you have some little kid who's, if you freak out and start yelling and get mad because a 2-year-old spilled milk on the floor, it's not on them, it's on you. So it's like, sometimes it's been an uncomfortable mirror to see how reactive or nervous or edgy I can get, because it's like, come on, man. It's like, this is a kid who's smart, who's sweet, and he's just doing something that all kids do, and you react like it's a big deal. It's like, whoa, that's not cool. And it really forces you to take a good second look at yourself and how you handle your emotions and how you handle other, it's because you're responsible for them. It's not, you cannot, like with adults, it's easy to blame the other person for your own emotional reactions. Like, yeah, I overreacted, but this person is an idiot. They deserve it. Yeah, they only hadn't done that, then, all will be good. So it's really their fault. It's not me. With a kid, you can't do that because it's not their fault, really. It's like, first, you're the one raising them. So whatever they do is a reflection of you. Second, they are little. Of course, they are going to do some dumb stuff every now and then. And so I found that very interesting in terms of, sometimes it's so easy to build these narratives about ourselves being great and wonderful, and then all it takes is a screaming kid for that narrative to come tumbling down, and you realize your limitations. And then, then I think everybody has them. Then the healthy thing is like, okay, whatever your limitations are, the point is not to beat yourself up and say, oh, I'm so much worse than I thought I was. It's like, okay, this is reality. This is where I'm at. How can I become a little bit better tomorrow? How can maybe 6 months from now be a lot better than I am today? And just work at it.
And how much did your martial arts background play into that?
I mean, there's something to be said about growing comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
And dealing with the fact that sometimes doesn't matter how well you're gonna fight, it's not gonna go well. Some days are just not, and so to be able to stay with it even when you're not quote unquote winning, it's important. It's an important thing to give you like endurance when things are not going your, because everybody can be cool when things are going their way. Well, maybe not everybody. Some people are obnoxious no matter what. It's a lot easier to be cool and pleasant when things are going your way. It's very interesting when things are not going your way to see how you respond.
Yeah.
And talking about, your martial arts background, you wrote a book, Create Your Own Religion, which really spoke to me. I grew up a wrestler. We grew up in a Catholic house, but as I grew older, started studying other philosophies, other religions, and kind of taking bits and pieces, put it in my toolbox. What does your Create Your Own Religion look like, or your daily practice with that?
I think that's really in some way it's the Bruce Lee idea as he applied to martial arts, applied to religion, philosophy, life in general, is nothing. There's not a field in which you find all the good answers within one school of thought. That just doesn't work that way. Usually multiple school of thoughts or schools of something else, whether it be martial arts or whatever the field is. Usually there are several sources that have good points. The problem is that because we crave belonging, because we crave identity, most people want to buy one source in its totality from A to Z. And my question is, why would you buy into something, including all its problems, its stupidity, its mistakes? Why don't you just take the best stuff that seems to work for you and mix it with other good things that work for you that you find elsewhere, and thereby create your own path as you go in a way that, and maybe you review some stuff later and you find that some of the stuff you casted aside, now it makes sense to you. Now you can use it. But I never understood this, to me, it comes from a desperate desire to belong and to have a quick, easy label that you can slap on as your identity. But I never really understood that desire to want to be one thing when it's plainly obvious that pretty much everything has strengths and weaknesses. So why do I want to volunteer to pick up the weaknesses of an ideology when you don't have to?
Has that always been your mindset to kind of question what's coming in and not take it all?
Yeah. It's like, I'll take whatever is useful and then I'll leave the rest and mix it with something else that works for me. It's like, it's in some way, it doesn't even seem strange to me or like this particularly original thought. I'm just like, that's what anybody should do. That's pretty straightforward. It's like, how do you, and it's not, unlike other models, this is not a one model, because saying that you pick and choose from different sources, the results are going to be completely different from one person to the next. So it's not preaching that everybody should be coming up with the same answers. It's just saying that the methodology behind it seems a little more efficient that way.
And you had mentioned Bruce Lee. Did you happen to see the 30 for 30?
Yeah, I just saw it actually.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? Was there anything that you thought they missed out on or anything like that?
Very well done. I think one of the things that most people don't touch on because it's not in their wheelhouse is this theme that is huge in Bruce Lee of refusing to belong to anything and refusing identities. He doesn't want to be the Kung Fu guy versus the karate guy. He doesn't want to even be the Chinese patriot against the others. It's like, Lee has very much this very strong individual bent. He's big on his own individuality. And he resents anything that cages that individuality and try to co-opt it into some larger movement. So I'm always interested in chatting about that stuff, in that aspect that is an extremely radical notion, because I don't care what identity people slap on themselves. The overwhelming number of people in the world want an identity. And if it's not one, it's the other. If it's not the mainstream one, it's the countercultural one. But everybody wants to be that because it's easier. It's reassuring. It's you don't have to think so hard if you have a sort of prepackaged identity with all the answers that come with it about everything you do in life. If you have to think about it, if at every step of the way you have to consider the pros and cons and adjust, that requires more work from you. It's to me, that's what life is. But ultimately, I think, and also it's harder because all the responsibility boils down to you as an individual, rather than just following the herd and being part of this larger movement.
And if Richie told me correctly, are you working on a History on Fire with Bruce Lee?
Yeah. It's probably going to be a while. It's probably going to be 2021, but I badly want to do a Bruce Lee series, either 2 or 3 episodes, I'm thinking.
And how much would Bruce Lee, in your personal opinion, do you think is, this great martial artist and a lot, or like Hollywood kind of building the folklore of this guy and being a martial artist?
I mean, hard to tell because martial arts back then were so different from today. So he was way ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, in understanding that you need to be more complete than, he understood the need, even though he was primarily a striker, he understood the need for grappling. He understood, he was fascinated with Filipino weaponry. He was, he clearly was curious enough to develop in a way that would have worked very well at a time when people were not doing that. And he clearly was a super athlete because he was ridiculously fast, highly, even one of the comments they made in the documentary he referred to is that his physical intelligence, his ability to pick up complex movements very quickly, that if you show him once or twice, he has it. That's a tremendous talent, So where his fighting skills exactly, who knows? I mean, I'm sure he was good. How good, nobody knows, and ultimately it's not even that interesting because who cares what somebody over half a century ago was like in his technique. It's like the principles are great, his ideas were great, it's fun to watch. That's it.
Yeah, one of my favorite conversations I think I've ever heard you have was when you and Mike V talked about Kung Fu.
Yep.
And Jimmy and I we're both Jersey guys, and we have several friends that are from Mike's hometown. And although we were never skateboarders, it was never allowed on the menu as kids. We were athletes, but just appreciate that kind of Jersey toughness that Mike, that persona that Mike is. Do you still catch up with Mike every once in a while? You guys still buddies? Yeah. How's he doing?
Actually, right now, as you are telling me, I just made a note to myself. Called Mike. Yeah, I actually thought about it earlier and then I forgot to do it, and so now I'm like, call him. Yeah, no, he's great. He's a great guy. He's awesome, and we keep talking about seeing if there's something we can do together at some point. We'll see if it happens or not, but yeah, he's a great guy, absolutely.
Yeah, seen many of his skateboard videos of him tearing it up, but then also not afraid to throw his hands a little bit.
Yeah, there was one thing that was great. Once it sent me, my daughter has a lot of kind of, I think we all have it to some degree, but some people more than others. A little bit of that performance anxiety, other people are watching, not wanting to look like a fool, fear of failure, that kind of stuff. And Mike sent us this video that was perfect for her because it was Mike trying to do this one skateboarding trick in front of a large audience and messing it up. And he tries again and he crashes. And he tries again and he crashes. And he tries again. And it goes on for like 10 minutes straight where he crashes, and sometimes badly, where he comes up bloodied up and everything. And he tries, I don't even know how many times. Like after a while, it's not even 3-4 times. You're on like try number 27, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's still going in front of all these people who are desperate to see him succeed, and it's just not happening. And then when he finally nails it, the whole place goes insane, right? Because it's like there's this, but like that point of like, that's what learning is. You keep doing it. Yeah, you screwed up. So what? That's how you get good at anything. Then you try again. No, screwed up again. Let's do it again. And with this relentless mission that he has in his mind and absolutely not caring about looking, quote unquote, badly in front of other people. And it was awesome. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
And that's a good learning lesson, right? Of just keep on going at it. And you hear that all the time. Don't quit, keep on going. If you fall, 10 times, get up 11 or whatever. I might have just did a George Bush with that analogy, but do you think there's a way to teach someone that, or you think that just comes with life experience and growing old and gaining wisdom?
I mean, I'm sure even stuff like that, if somebody show you that it's okay to fail, if somebody you respect and you think highly of shows you the process, and it's certainly inspiring because it helps. It's like, oh, so it's not just me. It's not, it's funny. Every time whether it's episodes or stuff I write on social media, It's weird. I notice anytime I show vulnerability, people eat it up. They can't get enough of it. And I realize because there's an enormous need of a bunch of people who struggle with their own stuff, who are afraid, who have failed, who are insecure, who have their issues, but they think that they are supposed to show a strong side at all times. And when they see somebody else who's like, hey man, yeah, I do get sad. Yeah, I do get mad. Yes, I am struggling with this. Yeah, I'm kind of afraid of tackling this. And if these are people that you respect and you like for other reasons, then people are like, oh wow, so somebody that I think so highly of is dealing with the same crap that I'm dealing with, and they are not even afraid to show it. So maybe it's okay to acknowledge that I have these feelings. Maybe it's okay to acknowledge that you just need to work at it, and it's okay. And I think that's super important.
Stay calm and breathe. We can figure this out.
Absolutely.
Daniele, we really appreciate your time today. If we could, we have a couple of quick rapid fires, and then we'll get you out of here. But thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Jimmy, hit him.
Do you have a daily practice or daily ritual?
Daily, not quite daily. I very much love working out, as in I'm just getting mats for my garage to be able to train in the garage. So that may become a daily thing. It's not quite daily, but it's definitely up on the list.
And I know back in the day you said you only use caffeine when you need it. Is that still the case?
Yeah, caffeine to me is like a hard drug, so it's cool sometimes, but it's one of those when you really really need it, go for it.
So when you really really need it, what form do you take it in?
At that point, it's like
Whatever.
shooting, pretty much just whatever. As long as it's. I mean, because I don't drink caffeine usually. To me, not only if I have an espresso, it will wire me like crazy, but even if I have a Coke, which I pretty much don't drink sodas ever, but when I do, man, I'm wired. That gets me going for a while.
So then the question would be, what warrants caffeine then?
It's like, okay, you have about 25 hours of work to get done in the next 6 hours. Go, make it happen. You need to, it's go, 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 go. And it's that kind of thing.
Do you have a favorite martial art to practice right now, currently?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy, what do? I do primarily grappling stuff, jiu-jitsu and judo. And also I like to do, with my daughter, for example, I'm showing her things that are martial in a looser sense, like things like Tai Chi, more like a meditation in movement or things like that. Those are also very pleasant in their own ways, in a different kind of way.
How's your foot sweep?
Foot sweeps are glorious.
That's my favorite move.
Yeah,
we're both wrestlers, but Jimmy is a 10th Planet Oceanside purple belt.
Oh, nice. Sweet. Yeah, it's, man, wrestling helps so much. Wrestling helps so much because it gives you that base, that balance, that understanding of where to put your weight and everything else. Never mind that insane work ethics, so that, to submit a wrestler, you have to realistically submit what other people would tap to 7 times before a wrestler will tap. So it's like, wrestling is awesome. It's the tiny bit of wrestling that I've ever done helped me so much in everything else because it was, it works. It's brilliant. And I like it better than, boxing, kickboxing, all of that was fun. I enjoy doing it, but, getting punched in the head gets tiring after a while. So grappling, I find it more something that you can do for your life without losing too many brain cells.
Yeah. That could be a gift and curse sometimes, being a wrestler, especially in jiu-jitsu, holding on too long or not wanting to admit defeat. Took me a couple of years to figure that one out, but yeah, definitely that work ethic helped. Do you have any podcasts or music that you're listening to right now?
What am I listening to these days? I'm digging a lot a tribe called Red. It's like
Hell
this,
yeah.
those guys. Yeah, those guys are awesome. And I love, in fact, when speaking of 10 Planet, Ilima Lay McFarlane, when she walks out to the cage in Bellator, and she's
Yeah.
often going to Tribe Called Red. It's awesome. It's
Yeah.
her walk out to the cage are some of the coolest ever. So those ones are fun.
I know what I'm going to use for the background when I make the promos for this podcast.
Oh man, those guys
Yeah.
are. I love that music. And what else? I've been listening to a bunch of like Mongolian folk metal, anything from the Who, not as in WHO, but HU, who are kind of this newer group that's pretty badass. And then one that I love, but unfortunately the lead guy died recently, is Tanger Cavalry. I watched them live too. They are awesome.
You find them on Spotify?
Probably. I
Yeah.
can use Spotify, so I haven't checked.
Okay.
But it is. You Google them, all sort of stuff shows up on YouTube, on wherever.
Cool. Check those out. And the last one I have, knowing your history background, do you have a favorite conspiracy theory?
I mean, there are some that are. It's kind of hard to deny. Some are just there, right? Like I did a couple of episodes about this one Italian gang in the 1970s and 80s, starting out as a street gang in Rome and then getting hooked up with serious power player, with like the government in Italy, with the Vatican. And I mean, the evidence there is so heavy that it switches from conspiracy theory to there's a lot. You don't know the exact details, but you're like, yeah, there's a lot of evidence there. So there's those ones are definitely interesting.
Yeah. And you know what they say, it's not a conspiracy if there's proof.
I mean, there's one that I love. It is like this guy who was the head of a bank that was essentially, I mean, to put it bluntly, they were doing money laundering for the mafia and through the Vatican Bank. And so what happens then is that at one point, these guys, when the mafia wants its money back, but church authorities has put this money instead into financing Solidarność, the movement in Poland against communism, the mafia is like, well, that's great, but we want our money back. And so the head banker is like, oops, we kind of have a problem here. And so he writes to the Pope, flat out telling him, look, I know you don't know the details of any of these, but I've been doing your bidding for all this time, essentially, and you would be, and he's putting this very polite letter about how he's been put in this impossible situation, without being too explicit, but basically the mafia is going to have his head on a pike if he doesn't come up with the money and, this and that. And then he says, and it would be really unfortunate, there are all these people who are offering me crazy money to start kind of spilling the beans of what happened between the Vatican and this. And you're like, oh, did you really say that? That was not. He promptly was found hanging from a bridge about 2 weeks later in London. And, who was behind it and how it worked out. It's, of course, ambiguous, but it's one of those that is like, ooh, 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 ooh.
Yeah.
Daniele, thank you so much. It's been over 7-8 years working shitty warehouse jobs, driving cross country, training, going for walks, listening to you. You've been the soundtrack. It's been a huge inspiration to the both of us. So it is an honor and a pleasure to, get you on the call today. And thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day. Thank you, Daniele.
You too. Have a great
Take care.
one.